Hi there, welcome. My name is Nicole with morningchores.com, and in today's video, we've got a packed one. We are going to give an end of the year recap on the gardening season, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, and everything in between. I'm also going to explain what I'm going to do in moving forward for the next growing season of 2024, and then I'm also going to show you how I plan on doing a complete total garden reset, which I'll explain in the not so pretty part of the gardening season of this year. If you're new here, welcome. We would love for you to hit that subscribe button. If you are a seasoned viewer, welcome back. I'm excited for today's video because it's always good to kind of reflect back on the growing season so that we can do better in the next one. As I say, gardening is a lifelong learning process. I don't feel like I'm ever done learning how to garden, and every year always brings new challenges and new successes and failures. So it's all about taking that information and improving in the next growing season. Overall, my gardening season this year was okay. I would say good in some ways, bad in others. It was not my best garden that I've ever grown, but there were things that did fine. So let's talk about the good things, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty, not so nice things. The things that did really well for me were potatoes and garlic, but I feel like those are kind of my tried and trues. They always, thankfully, do really well every year. So those, again, did not fail to disappoint. They did really, really well. My tomatoes did better this year. I had a good crop last year, but my tomatoes always get hit with blight, and they get hit with it early, and it actually stunts the production of the tomato plant. So I don't get as many as I could have, but this year it actually did not hit until the very end. So I was able to get a really good tomato crop off of my plants, and I was really, really grateful for that. Other things that did really well are my lettuces, my zucchini did well, and some of my herbs did perfectly fine. Now, the not so good things were things like green beans, cucumbers, and some of my other herbs. I replanted my green beans 3 times and they just never grew, and I've never had any issues with green beans, and the seeds I purchased were the same ones I've always purchased, and they've always done very well. So I don't really think it was the seeds. I just think it really was the weather. There was a couple of weeks back in the spring, early summer, where we got some of the effects from the Canadian smoke from the forest fires. So I think that had a lot to do with it, because it really blocked out the sun during weeks when the plants really needed that. So that's kind of my theory. I don't really know other than that. That's the only thing that was different. Same thing with the cucumbers. I planted them right around that time and they just did not grow. So I replanted them 3 times as well, and they never came up. So I kind of gave up on the green beans and cucumbers. Another thing that did not do well for me was basil. I started it by seed indoors, had beautiful plants, and then I planted them outside and they just did not, they failed. They died. They did not do well at all. So going forward next year, I'm still going to try to grow these things because we like to eat cucumbers, we love green beans, and we love basil, and I also can a lot of those items and use them in different recipes. So I am going to try growing them this year, but I do have some plans for improving and updating the garden spaces, and that's what we'll talk about next. My big change for next year is I am going to have 2 more dedicated growing spaces. Behind me here, you can see I have several raised beds. I started adding them slowly. So the first year I added these 2 over here. I believe I had the cold frame first, and then I added this one. And then the next year I added this current one with the flowers and herbs in it. And then I added that one. And then I just recently moved that very far raised bed from the garden up here. So this is going to become what I call my kitchen garden. And what I plan on growing here are things that I can harvest and eat right away or prepare in a meal right away. So up here will be things like lettuces, herbs, peppers, zucchini, and tomatoes. Those are kind of my main staples. I may do potatoes up here as well. I haven't decided yet. I like doing them down in the garden because I can grow a lot of potatoes down there. So that's kind of up in the air, but I definitely want to keep those other veggies and herbs that I listed before that. I'm definitely going to grow those up here. So my plan is to kind of keep expanding this space until I feel like I have enough. And then the garden that's down the hill, the one that you see in my videos, that one is going to become my, what I call my preservation garden. So I plan on growing things that I put up in storage, things like garlic, the potatoes, some of my squash plants like butternut squash, pumpkins, those types of things. That I plan on doing down there. As far as the green beans go, I like growing them down there because I use the fence to control the vines, and it makes it really easy for picking because I don't have to bend down and pick. I just stand at the fence and pick. So I probably will do my green beans down there, but I might do them in both places just to see where they do better. So we're down here at the garden, the main garden space, and you can probably see, if you have been following us for a while, the garden does look a lot different. So we took down the fence just because there were so many holes in it. It had lasted about 3 years, and it was the cheap chicken wire. So we took that down, and I'm debating whether to put up a fence again next year or not. But we did take the fence down, and we ripped out, in this corner we had really big elderberry plants. They were my original elderberry plants. Well, they were taking over the garden, and it was something I kind of knew would happen eventually. But when I purchased the plants, I really didn't have anywhere to put them. I tried growing some in our back field, but the weeds just took over and they never took hold. We do have some native elderberry growing kind of back in this section behind the chicken coop, but it's so tall and there's so much poison ivy around it, I can't get to it. So we ended up creating a space down just south of the garden, and those are my now elderberry rows. So I have a designated elderberry space. So as far as my great garden reset that I'm calling it, I like to do the no-till back to Eden garden method. And what's really important about doing the back to Eden garden method is that you mulch the garden every fall. Well, the past couple years I haven't really been able to get mulch, and I can purchase it. I just haven't because it is a big job. You purchase it, it gets dumped in the driveway, and you have to wheelbarrow it down. I've never been able to get anyone to deliver it near the garden just because they have to drive their big truck through our yard, and nobody wants to do that just because they're afraid they're going to get their wheels stuck in our yard. And I'm not against doing hard work. It just hasn't worked out that I've been able to do that the last few seasons. So because I haven't mulched the garden, the weeds have just taken over, and it was really bad. So I started thinking, what can I do to kind of reset the garden so that I can go back to the no-till mulching method of gardening. I really do like it. I've just learned my lesson that you have to mulch it every year. You have to do something to condition the soil. You can't just let it go. Otherwise you're going to have to till. So my first thought was to till it up and then cover it and just let it sit, and hopefully that would mitigate the weed situation enough to where I could work the soil, because the soil itself is beautiful, rich, dark soil. I mean, the soil is great. It's just got a lot of weeds in it. So anyways, long story short, we ended up borrowing a rototiller, but that situation did not work out. So my second plan, and this was actually my husband's idea, is to just cover the garden with plastic, and we're gonna let it sit until next spring. The plastic should kill off most of the weeds, at least enough to where we can really get in there and work the soil again. And then in the spring, my plan is to cover it with mulch. So that's kind of our goal. It's very simple. I purchased the plastic from a local greenhouse, and I'm just laying it down and pinning it in, and we're just gonna let it sit all winter, and we'll see what happens in the spring. So I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. I'm gonna give it a try, so I'll have to give you an update in the spring to let you know if it did. Thanks for joining us in today's video. I hope you found it helpful. It's always fun to reflect back on the gardening season to see where you need to improve, even if you did have some failures. But it's always good to learn from those failures so that we can move forward and improve in the next gardening season. Take the time to head over to morningchores.com. There's so much over there about gardening, as well as animal husbandry, homesteading, and much more. So we would love for you to click the link in the description box below and check that out. Hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you on the next one.